Well, hello, Glue Troopers. Max of Max's Models here, and I just want to do a quick follow-up to yesterday's video on E.K. Shaw's book, There Never Was an Arrow. I've had a lot of incredibly informative comments left behind. I knew it would stimulate a lot of discussion, and I have not been disappointed. Some of the folks even had family members who worked on the airplane who added a lot of interesting details, so we'll probably talk about that later in the live stream. A lot of folks pointed out how the Arrow suffered an eerily similar fate to another aircraft, the British TSR-2, or Tactical Strike Reconnaissance Mach 2. And I was a little surprised, so I went back and did a little research, and it's true, there really are a lot of eerie similarities. And now there's also a fair amount of differences, but overall, it's not unfair to call the TSR-2 the British Arrow in that regard. Both of them were aircraft with great potential that were killed off for largely political reasons, hiding behind cost savings as an excuse. Although the hatchet job that was done on the Arrow was far more thorough, I believe that the aircraft share enough similarities that they fall into the same category. Both of them also had the same problems facing them, in that the electronics in both aircraft were not really complete. The ones in the Astral Fire Control System for the Arrow was still under development, and the terrain following system in the TSR was having a lot of problems because the plane basically just went so bloody fast it couldn't handle the vibration. And these probably could have been figured out over time, but what both of them really suffered from in the end were not technical problems. It was a lack of political support. In the case of the Arrow, actually active political support to get rid of it. The F-111 wound up being the aircraft that would sort of rise to the top and go into serial production for no more reason than it had the necessary political as well as economic support behind it. And McNamara, the Secretary of Defense in the United States, had put a lot of his basically personal credibility on the line pushing the aircraft. He wanted it to be a dual airplane, fighter and bomber. And as one naval officer put it, who was involved with the testing of what was then called the TFX program, all of the thrust in Christen could not make a fighter out of that plane. But McNamara had his ego and his reputation at stake, so he pushed it through, and eventually it did make a good serviceable bomber, but although its early operations in Vietnam did not fare so well. But they finally got it worked out, and then of course they basically tried to force it down the throat of the Royal Air Force and the Royal Australian Air Force. And basically, long story made very short, McNamara went to them and said, look, you're working with this TSR airplane, and I'm sure it's a very pretty plane with lots of potential, but my airplane's operational. I'll give you a sweetheart deal on it. So the Australians and the Royal Air Force agreed, and the TSR eventually got canceled. And then, of course, the McNamara administration turned around and said, well, the exchange rates changed. You're going to have to pay market value for the airplane. And the British possibly wisely just pulled out. And the Australians did wind up buying some of them, but and I believe they were the only operator. But there you go. That's not even really an American thing. It's just business, Morty. It's just business. It's nothing personal. So anyway, that's kind of how that went, and at least from what I've been able to dig up so far. I'm sure a lot of you guys have a lot of things to add, and I imagine some of you are melting down your keyboards right now. That's all good. So there's a really good video by Mega Projects covering the cancellation of the TSR, and it is amazing how similar it is to the cancellation of the Arrow. And both of them are a couple of the great could-have-been airplanes. Well, anyway, I just wanted to thank everyone for all of the comments and everything, and when we get around to a live stream, I'm sure we'll be talking about this. And we've been talking about airplanes that have been canceled. So, this is a kit model channel, so let's talk about other things that have been canceled, like the Batcopter that never got made by Aurora, or maybe some cool cars that never got made that should have been, Okay, I'm just rambling at this point, guys. I just want to say thanks for all the great responses to the video. We'll talk about this stuff later. Take care of yourselves, and as always, model on.